So, good evening. 10 years after the formation of Telangana state, the Telangana is poised to make a big change. Are we looking at a big change at Telangana? The elections are going to happen in a couple of days' time on 30th. Telangana goes to polls. And the results that we are expecting, are we looking at a surprise? The AIDEM Interactions is looking at the Telangana pre-poll and the poll scenario in Telangana. And to discuss with Telangana, we have with us Kunal Shankar, Deputy Editor, The Hindu. He has done extensive coverage of Andhra and Telangana. Welcome to the AIDEM Interactions, Kunal.
Thank you so much, Anand. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Yeah. For 10 years, we have seen Chandrasekhar Rao, KCR, having a firm grip over Telangana, the affairs of Telangana, ever since the formation of the state. Now, are we looking at a change, a possible change there? What is the situation of KCR and BRS in Telangana right now as Telangana goes into poll the day after tomorrow?
So you rightly described him as having had a firm grip on Telangana, and there's no doubt about it. First I would like to sort of paint or take a longer view of Telangana to get to the sort of the point that I would like to make, which is a slightly more nuanced point. I do know there's been a lot of chatter and a particular din in the media that the Congress, that there's a resurgent Congress in Telangana, and that there's every possibility that it may even call the election. I do not doubt that there is a resurgent Congress in Telangana. I think that is most certainly so. But I have my reservations to call it a victory for them for various reasons. And I think for which I would initially like to go back to the formation of the state itself to some extent, and the consequences and the influence that it still continues to have on the population. If you remember, KCR was a rather towering personality within the Telugu Desam party, which Chandrababu Naidu was headed, and he was the deputy speaker in the assembly. When he then walks out, after the new states of Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, and others are formed, promising that Telangana should be formed. Of course, the former parts of the Nizam of Hyderabad's princely state, which considers itself quite culturally differently from the rest of Andhra. But it was in the backdrop of a major agrarian crisis when the state really came into being. If you remember, some of the highest recorded farmer suicides were in the Telangana region. There was a major drought-like situation in the state. Agriculture had never really received its due in Telangana, despite the catchment area of Godavari being almost 70% in the semi-arid region of Telangana. Most of the water went to the plains of the Andhra region, which have always been sort of fertile and the larger breadbasket of the undivided Andhra. So when KCR inherited, if we can call it that, the sort of the state in 2014, despite the fact that there was a popular uprising supported heavily by the youth, Osmania University being the epicenter, the Telangana Joint Action Committee being headed by intellectuals like Professor M. Kodandram and others. At the hustings, the state, the Telangana only got TRS, which was then Telangana Rashtra Samiti, not the Bharatiya Rashtra Samiti that it is today, only got about 63 of the 119 seats. So it was a rather slim majority, given the fact that, he was KCR, or rather TRS was seen as the sort of the custodian of the Telangana movement at that point. And the reasons for that are also many. One is there was a skepticism as to whether a state which is going to be landlocked like Telangana, could really perform. There were enough within Andhra, from Andhra, who really by then had made Telangana home, Hyderabad home, business communities which were largely led by upper caste Andhra settlers, if we can call them that, were still very much resident of the larger state of Telangana. Um, but in the 10 years since that election, there has been a considerable social and economic transformation that the region of Telangana has gone through. And we need to understand it in a sort of a layered manner. One was that the initial rural distress was one of the first things that that KCR, that the TRS government really attempted to address, and that most certainly paid off handsome dividends by the time the 2018-19 elections came about, which is the second term. By then they won a very decisive victory. Of course, by then the KCR, being the rather shrewd politician that he is, already had engineered considerable defections from the Congress, which had emerged as the principal opposition at that time. If you also remember, there was this Revant Reddy controversy of buying MLAs, who was at that point, it was the sitting Anglo-Indian nominated MLA who was apparently approached with money. There was a undercover video that was shot and to expose Revant Reddy, who now, of course, is not anymore with the TDP at that time. So there were these constant efforts to undermine, whether that was true or not, these various controversies. KCR kept up the assault on the opposition despite having the majority, because he knew he had a slim majority. That is one. Secondly, he ensured that certain schemes, which on the face of it really appeared quite tenuous, landed up beginning to perform in the later years. One of them being this Mission Kakatiya, which was the rejuvenation of the various man-made reservoirs, the undulated reservoirs that it is traced back to the Kakatiya kingdom, hence the name Mission Kakatiya, which, and fortunately for the TRS, there were very good rains in the coming couple of years, so reservoirs were full. It led to a lot of easing of the farmers' distress in the state in those years, and while this was happening parallelly, there were other social schemes that were very much, we could say, the first of its kind in the country. For instance, something called Kalyan Lakshmi, which was then called Shadi Mubarak for the Muslims. He also played with this idea of, he's a great brand ambassador. Much like Modi. I almost compare Modi, I compare KCR to Modi, because in fact both of them are extremely good at media management, and he's extremely good at branding his projects. So Kalyan Lakshmi was a certain amount of money that is set aside for women to get married, so that it eases the burden on the bride side. Imagine rural communities. That was a huge hit. Similarly, he rebranded it as Shadi Mubarak for the Muslim communities. There was this Dalit Bandhu scheme, which hugely assisted, empowered several Dalit communities with stipends and subsidies. So, and as you know, Telangana has a major Adivasi and Dalit population, one of the largest in the country. Particularly the Adilabad, the northern Andhra Telangana region is largely populated by Adivasis and Dalits. His major push for the Singareni collieries, was another scheme that, from the industrial perspective. And of course, we must remember that he inherited a major budget surplus. which at that time he put to good use, and he ensured that a lot of it was also concentrated. Ironically, we consider him to be someone who's championed, the first term rural populations, but we forget that this major chunk of the money actually did come to Hyderabad. The development of the Gachibowli information technology area, which is now called the fintech area of Hyderabad, all that actually happened in that first term. So the first term was a major solidifying term for him, which then brought him a handsome return. Now, having said that, in this current term, I would say that there has most certainly been counter to, or rather, firstly, he has not he has not continued to deliver the way he did in the first term. There haven't been major schemes or things. This Raitu Bandhu controversy that is playing out in the media now actually dates back to 2018, because he announced this scheme at the almost at the launch of the for his second term in the election, and which is why the Congress and other parties are quite upset now, because that was viewed as very much of a sort of a crutch for the rural communities, as a sort of as a sort of a bribe, if you will, to get them back.
And that has been stopped by the election commission now, no?
That has been stopped by the election commission now. Yes. So this historical background is important to understand why the parties are up against this Raitu Bandhu scheme. But at the same time, if you look at the narrative, he has now very much made it to appear as if the Congress has led to a stop of something of a welfare scheme. So he's a brilliant media manager in this. People forget to make the connection between what had happened 5 years ago and now. So has he delivered in this last term? I would say not, most certainly not, particularly for the rural communities. But does that mean the rural community is entirely disenchanted to the level that it will vote him out? I highly doubt that. And that is because I think they still hang on to this hope that Telangana, there is a sort of a nativist attitude that at the end of the day, there is, Telangana is sort of pegged to this man and he has brought about these things. There's a sort of a thing that, hope that that the next term might be better. So there is a disenchantment, but I don't think people are entirely convinced that Congress is the party that can win them what they want.
Having said that, there is an interesting development where KCR's own constituency, Gajwel, where he has been winning for the last 10 years, representing for the last 10 years, that saw a very unique protest of something we call protest nomination. 145 nominations were filed from Gajwel, 100 of which were supposedly those affected by the eviction at the Shankar Hills. Similarly, there have been protests against the Kalishwaram lift irrigation projects, where there have been extensive dislocation. Having said while we acknowledge the popularity of KCR, it seems that in his own constituency there is a protest building up. So how does that reflect in the public mood across Telangana?
This is a major issue. In fact, even during the Mission Kakatiya project, while it was hailed as a major irrigation project, the issue of displacement was not adequately addressed even at that time. But the distress was such that people were willing to take whatever came to them at that point. But for instance, so very close to his constituency, Gajwel, Mallana Sagar was one of the main places where a similar, reservoir was coming up, which was, I believe, in Harish Rao's constituency, if not his own, Gajwel, who was at that time the irrigation minister, his nephew, and this issue of land being diverted to irrigation projects and not adequate compensation has undoubtedly undermined his, shall we say, rural outlook. And Kaleshwaram is another case. And Kaleshwaram is rather an interesting case because at the time when Kaleshwaram was being designed, and in fact by 2018, if I'm not mistaken, it was already commissioned or it was done. It was at the confluence of three states, in the north, Telangana, I think Chhattisgarh, and then either it is Andhra or Orissa. I'm sort of unsure, but it's at the confluence of three states. And Telangana was at loggerheads at various states because it was at that time not. It was in the downstream area, and the project cost was exorbitant, and the dislocation were huge. I mean, more than 25,000 acres, etc., of highly fertile land. And right now, the three other lift irrigation which are connected to Kaleshwaram are yet not complete, right? So Medigadda and a couple of others. So this disenchantment he has not adequately addressed, because now people have come to a point, farmers have come to a point where they have taken for granted, okay, there is some water provision, but beyond that, what? So this Raitu Bandhu is a sort of an afterthought again now. So, but will the farmers see this as will they respond with a sort of anger, for particularly tenant farmers and others, see this as a little too late, or will they see this as at least him addressing it is something that we need to look at? And what will he do to adequately compensate, particularly because several of these projects have circumvented the Land Acquisition Act of 2013, right? Because he didn't give like to like land in many cases. He sort of drew a little bit from Chandrababu Naidu's attempt in the formation of the capital, where some land was given over a period of time to make income, etc. So this disenchantment exists, but we must also remember that his base has rather solidified in Hyderabad, interestingly, because Hyderabad has seen one of the largest real estate booms across India. The prices have gone up. There is companies, particularly tech, R&D, and many sunrise industries are now, in fact, considering Hyderabad. Bangalore is there, but it's pretty close among the what are called tech cities, if we can call them. Several entrepreneurs who were rather skeptical of what might happen to them because they were viewed as Andhra settlers, have not been disturbed. They have allowed to sort of their businesses to flourish. There was this initial worry that there'll be a flight of them going to Andhra, but that has actually not happened. So that initial animosity against who were called Andhra settlers is not anymore used as a sort of a whip, right? So I would say it's a mixed bag. And Telangana in the past 10 years, what I meant by the transformation is that it has actually highly gotten urbanized as a state. As it is a rather semi-arid state with agriculture which is spread out vastly. There are some small pockets of agriculture even within reserved forests in Telangana, for instance, in Adilabad and Medchal and other districts. So the highly urbanizing nature that is anyway witnessed across the country has really accelerated in the state like Telangana. And there is this sense that the urban population might land up being his rescue.
Yeah, but then even while acknowledging that the disenchantment is there, I think the opposition parties are focusing on the issues of corruption, because the KCR is pitched against a high decibel campaign from both ends, from the BJP and the Congress. BJP led by none less than the Prime Minister and Amit Shah. Modi himself called this clubbed BRS with Congress saying that they are equal sinners. And on the other end, Rahul Gandhi and Mallikarjun Kharge, they are accusing KCR of being alienated from the public. He lives in a farmhouse. So he is not in touch any longer with the public issue, is what Kharge said the other day. So KCR is facing a twin attack from the BJP and the Congress at the same time. And both of them are raising the issue of corruption and alienation from the public. So what could be the counter narrative that KCR will have to put it in front when he is facing the election?
Yes, I mean, this is undoubtedly, this has been a build-up to this. If you remember, there was even this controversy when he inaugurated that farmhouse. He brought in, I think like over 100 saints to his farmhouse to bless it and all. Those were years when it was almost like a second freedom in Telangana. I mean, people were just like overlooking these various extravaganzas by KCR because they felt that whatever little they were getting is something that they've just never had for so long. And so you rightly point to a certain, and also not to mention the fact that the BJP has constantly now been talking about a sort of a family politics, which has most certainly entrenched BRS, not just his son and daughter, his nephew, and other family members very much control the party, and major cabinet decisions are really taken by them. So this issue has been highlighted, and there does appear to be a lack of a counter narrative, as you say. But at the same time, we must not forget that KCR has also gone ahead and, if you remember, again, I'll go back to what he did, like the renovation of the Bhadrachalam temple. This idea that, okay, so we lost Tirupati to Andhra, let's create a alternative Tirupati in Telangana. So, and these sort of, and giving a handsome amount of money for the Waqf board and ensuring that the Hajj pilgrims are still well taken care of. He has done these various what we might call a calculated decision of viewing each class of community and giving them certain SOPs that are populist in nature. So in my view, he would still be viewed as a sort of a son of the soil who will continue to at least rise up. I mean, I'm still not entirely convinced that that he might be voted out. I think his margins would definitely slim. There is no doubt about that. Because while you say that the BJP and Congress have, there's no doubt that there's been a high decibel campaign against him and a rather effective campaign, but the BJP, unlike the Congress, does not really have an effective leadership to portray at the state level. And this has been their problem almost at all state levels, right? Including Rajasthan and wherever they have now, in Madhya Pradesh, the campaign has entirely sidelined Shivraj Singh Chauhan until very recently, and that is because of his latest scheme again for women. But if you look at again in Telangana, there is really no leadership that can be viewed as a strong counter, and I think people do perceive that. Whereas at least the Congress has some sort of a leadership that they might view as a seasoned political leadership. So the opposition vote, in my view, would tend to come more towards the Congress than to BJP, and those who are disenchanted with KCR would definitely tend to go more towards Congress than the BJP. There is no doubt. But to what extent this can tip the balance, I'm unsure. I most certainly believe that this is going to be a rather reduced mandate for KCR. But he might just still end up getting a third term, and we cannot rule that out, is what I think.
Yeah, KCR continues to be a favorite among the voters. That's a general feeling. But it's very interesting to note that KCR has been famous for his witty remarks and the cracking repartees during his speeches. But this has been conspicuously missing in these campaigns, from what I read in the reports. The BRS officials say that it's mostly due to the hectic schedule. He has to be everywhere at the same time. But do we sense a fatigue setting in?
Yeah, I think to some extent, he has always been a workaholic. In fact, he is famous to be someone to be have known to be up by 4 and rather a disciplinarian who worked well into the midnight. And as you rightly say, he's always been he's always been witty. I remember attending his press conferences. Where he also makes a point to remember journalists by their names, calling them and saying, such and such wrote this about me and all of that. So he also had a great press connect. And I have also I have to caveat this. I've also not really traveled for the election this time, but I do hear that there has not been that sort of the election campaign itself appears lackluster. Age has also actually caught up with him. I think we forget that he's well into his late 70s, if not so we have to look into various aspects. But whether that is being viewed as having been burnished his credentials and being seasoned, or if he's burnt out. I mean, in Indian politics, we've always had, unlike in many other Western countries, we've always had politicians who've made comebacks in their 80s and 90s. So, I mean, Achyutanandan is a classic case in Kerala. So, one cannot entirely write off someone like KCR, I think.
Yeah, you said that it's going to be so you cannot rule out the third term for KCR, but there is a study, pre-poll survey by South First and People Pulse team, where they predicted BRS will drop from 88 seats in 2018 to 41 to 46, whereas the International Congress will rise from 19 seats in the last election to 57 to 62. Does that sound a plausible solution? A possible result outcome?
80, it'll fall from 88 seats to
44 and 47. 44 to 41 to 47 is the prediction they have done.
That is a half of the so well below the majority mark.
Well, majority, because it's a 119 is a total capacity.
Yeah.
Total number of seats, and the Congress seats predicted are 57 to 62.
I don't know if I would say that the Congress might definitely double or double its tally. We can hope that we can see them coming into about the late 30s, almost 40. But I don't think the BRS will lose more than maybe 15 seats. I mean, even if it lands up being a slim minority government, there is the MIM. We must not forget that MIM is solidly still with the TRS. They have not broken ranks, and I don't see that happening.
Okay, so let's hope that KCR will get probabilities are that KCR will get a third time. So moving on, because we have almost at the end of the interaction. So one question. What I have in mind is whenever we are talking about elections in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, we have to mention the Red Corridor, the Naxal belt. But then this term, the Naxal impact has been considerably less, I believe. For example, in a constituency like Mulagu, the contest is between a formal Naxal with Congress ticket and the BRS candidate who is a daughter of a CPI Maoist commander who was killed in police encounter. So will this election mean that the democracy will have a win over the political extremism?
Yes, I think this is a theme that has run through what is considered the Red Corridor, including Chhattisgarh. If you look at that, I mean, I think there are many reasons for this. One of it is the fact that for better or worse, the Forest Rights Act and later on the sort of the PESA, I think Panchayat extension into scheduled areas and others have formalized have brought the Adivasi communities into the formal nation state or governance structures, whether we like it or not. To some extent, there is the argument that this has eroded their way of life. This has changed their this has undermined their own languages and cultures. This has undermined their farming practices and livelihoods. There is the other side, which is that they have sort of been brought into the formal ambit. For instance, one of the things that I had noticed when I was covering this 2-bedroom scheme that KCR famously announced. And it was already, at the time of announcement, there were already problems because they were considered substandard, everything. But if I visited the Kaval Tiger Reserve in Medchal, in Mancherial, in Adilabad, which was erstwhile Adilabad district, several of the Rajgond communities actually wanted to get out of the forest because their economies had considerably shifted. They largely traded with handmade bamboo products, but almost all their markets were in what are second or third tier cities and etc. So the hold that the Maoists had and the sort of political awareness of wanting to protect the forest as an economic reserve has also come down along with that. That is one unfortunate part. But as you say, there has been a greater penetration of the idea of a politicized democratic process among the Adivasi communities, and that might be a good thing.
Yeah. So while we are expecting a very close fight between the Congress and the BRS led by KCR, let's hope that the democracy wins in the final run. Thank you for joining us in the AIDEM Interactions, Kunal. It was a great experience that you have shared from your wide experience of covering Telangana and Andhra elections. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Anand. Thanks for having me.